Paul Revere is a fascinating individual, and as we know from the Midnight Ride story, he's a patriot through and through. Throughout his life, he really wanted to serve his country, but he also loved rolling up his sleeves and just tinkering with something interesting. And these were two sides of his personality: the patriot who wanted to be a leader of his society, and the inventor or entrepreneur who wanted to get his hands dirty.
He's a man who his whole life was trying to get the recognition that he craved. He went from artisan to merchant to an entrepreneur. In the 1780s and 90s, he's active in Boston. He's part of the political movement that are going on in the new nation. He's president of the Board of Health. He's Suffolk County coroner. He's involved in all kinds of philanthropic ventures. So really, he's made it. He has become the gentleman he always wanted to be.
He believed he had earned the right to enter into the leadership ranks. He was always denied a spot in these ranks because he was an artisan, not considered leadership material. So after the war, he found out that that was his chance to rise and to become accepted as a member of the leading classes. Unfortunately, his countrymen didn't quite see it that way.
There was something missing. He saw an opportunity to do something no one else could do. And I think that pleased him deeply. But it was risky. And you have to wonder, why would a man at what one might consider the sort of pinnacle of his life take on such a risky venture? He was driven by some of the qualities that you see in current modern entrepreneurs. Again, a deep ego, perhaps a deep sense of a chip on the shoulder, and an innate knowledge that allowed him to move from a thought, an idea, to an actual product. He did it with his silver. He had to imagine, you've got a piece of flat metal, and you turn it into something lovely and elegant. That takes knowing and being able to see what you're creating before you've even created it.
So Paul Revere was brought in by Benjamin Stoddert, the first Secretary of the Navy, to try and help Americans figure out how to roll copper. Copper rolling was this guarded secret in England, and the trick was to take a piece of copper and make it both flexible and strong. The main use of copper was on the hulls of wooden vessels that were sailing in warm waters to protect them from sea life that would damage the hull. And Americans just could not figure out how to do this.
Revere determined, and it comes from his work as a goldsmith, as a silversmith, he understood how to flatten metal. And copper is metal, and he decided, even though he wasn't really sure how to do it, that he could flatten copper into sheets for use on the bottoms of ships, the roofs of buildings, and he sent his son to England. They did a little espionage. He saw how the rollers were made, and he brought that to the United States. His contribution to the growth of American industry, and in fact our success in the War of 1812, is because he figured out how to roll copper into sheets.
Revere got a controversial loan from the United States government, which was very important to him because it was proof that he was serving his country in a time of need. He was given his loan under the John Adams administration that was very friendly to him. And in the year 1800, Thomas Jefferson was elected. Paul Revere wrote about this as, "What a dreadful change in politics." And Thomas Jefferson wasn't sure that he should repay the loan that was promised to Revere. Revere had to lobby quite a bit for that. He started out in Boston as a silversmith, and he worked with bells and cannons, but he was expanding his operations, and he needed more space, he needed water power, and he needed a room to put his machinery.
Revere would have been familiar with Canton because of the gunpowder mill on this property. That was active during the Revolution, and then later on you have the ironworks here. I think that Canton was certainly in his sights for quite some time, and then you have the Neponset. You have water power, and you have an opportunity to power what you build out here. Plus, there were some buildings on the property when he bought it, so he's got a little bit of a head start. He's still going to devote a fair amount of money, in excess of $10,000 at the time, a huge amount of money, into developing the property to make it into the mill he needed it to be.
Paul Revere was brought up in the artisan tradition where you gave skilled laborers a lot of leeway to do the work the way they wanted to and respect them as an autonomous person. So he was very much interested in trying to figure out what would help each worker be happiest. He gave them control over their hours that they worked, control over the type of work they did. He even had a liquor allowance for some of his workers, just so they could enjoy their work a little bit more. Throughout the records, we could see Paul Revere is always working hard. He's trying to give room and board often to his workers and give them very competitive salaries. He seems to really identify with the worker spirit. As he was looking towards Canton, he wanted to bring in different types of production, different relationships with labor, and different scales of operation.
Coming to the Canton property now is literally astonishing. It has been transformed in a way that I think honors Revere's legacy and the legacy of this property, which meant so much to the town of Canton. The industry that was here was essential to the growth of Canton. It also retains that flavor. You can see the river, you can see the foundation where the barn originally sat, the transformation of this wonderful building with Revere copper on the roof again into a great restaurant really is an opportunity for Canton and for the region to rediscover Revere through this wonderful place and to have an opportunity to be outside, perhaps come to a festival or some kind of an event, but also learn something about that great history that happened here.
Sometimes we look at some of these historical figures like Revere and we imagine the myth and the midnight rider on horseback, and it's important to see them as a day-to-day human being who's going through running a business, living in a certain space, using their space wisely, and dealing with the environment. I just love the opportunity to walk in his footsteps here, think about the different uses of the land, the water, the raw materials, and really embrace that important reality connection to this part of American history. It's amazing to think of Paul Revere at the age of 65 as getting ready to start his most risky and complicated endeavor of his career, to be the first American to roll copper into sheets. I just couldn't believe that after all of these leaps he had made, he was ready for one more midnight ride at the end of his career.